I was about 13 or 14 and I was babysitting two boys for some church members. I had done it before, the kids loved me and the parents were very comfortable with me. This was a night where they were going to be gone for pretty much until like 2:30 in the morning. I was doing it for free that day because they were going to do something church related and that's just how I rolled. Anyway, the house they lived in was an apartment complex, you know, one of those small ones that had 2 floors and 4 places in each spot. They're on the bottom floor with 2 bedrooms on either side of the apartment, with the kitchen on the left and the living room on the right, with the sliding glass door to a small patio and a public bathroom next to the front door. It was about, I think, 1:30 and I knew they would be getting home soon. The kids were knocked out and I had finished my homework and they didn't have cable. This was before Netflix became an online service, so they had a couple of DVDs and VHS to watch, so I grabbed land before time to make the night go quicker. I was already very tired and had nodded off a couple times. About 2 I could hear knocking on the front door. Knowing the parents had a key, I did nothing but sit there in the dark with the TV glowing. Being a paranoid person who watches and reads enough horror, I grabbed the baseball bat that was next to the couch. What happened next will haunt me forever. I heard a small voice, almost like a young woman's, "Oh dear, that won't help you." My heart stopped and I realized the patio door didn't have the blinds shut. My eyes shift slowly to the door and I see someone on the patio staring in. I couldn't make anything out other than they were very short and wide. I screamed and ran into the kids' room. Thankfully, they were still asleep. Sadly, this was before I had a cell phone and there were no cordless phones. All I did was push the dresser in front of the door and stare at the one window of the room. That's when it became dark as a shadow loomed on the window. The knocking started again and the woman's voice called out, "Come on, dearie, I won't hurt you. Please come out." The window was being knocked so hard I was afraid it would break. The kids finally woke up and they were scared. I was a big girl and could at that time lift my own weight, but knowing I had 2 kids with me, I became vulnerable and afraid. Within 2 seconds, I hear the father yell out, "Hey, who the hell are you?" And the person ran off. The front door opened and there was harsh knocking on the kids' bedroom door. Thankfully, it was the parents, and after I let them in and put the dresser back, I explained what happened and they called the police. When they arrived, they obviously found nothing, but the bushes that hide the patio were obviously cut up and ripped up to get through. I babysat for them once more after that, but after they moved away about 5 months later, I never babysat anyone ever again. And again to this day, I know the woman was long gone, but every time I hear a knock, a chill runs through me. Stranger who was watching me, let's not meet again. This experience still shakes me up to this day. I don't know exactly what happened. I live in a very safe neighborhood, which makes this even creepier because it goes to show you never know what lies beneath. My nephew was about 5 years old. I was asked to babysit him for the night. I was young at the time and didn't really know how to watch a kid, so I figured I'd just put on Netflix for a few hours. We went to the kids section of Netflix and started watching some show about talking cars. This was about 5 p.m., so it was sunlight out. Perpendicular to the couch is a sliding glass door. The curtain for the door was open. I was sitting on the couch with my nephew as we watched TV together. My nephew really liked the show, so we kept watching it. This went on for a few hours until it was dark outside. In my foolishness, I turned on some lights, but I never did shut the curtain. It was one of those things where other people can see in, but all you see from inside is the blackness of the night. My backyard is adjacent to a big field, so there's no street lights out there or anything. Suddenly, I heard the sound of one of the deck chairs being dragged across the deck. I instantly recognized this sound and just assumed it was my parents. Why they would come home silently and then go outside to move around deck furniture in the middle of the night is something I didn't really think about. Like I said, it's a safe neighborhood. We watched TV for maybe an hour until it was bedtime. When I brought my nephew to bed, I realized my parents had been home and I asked them who was out on the deck. They both denied ever going out on the deck. Creeped out, I went to the kitchen and turned on the deck light. From the window, I could see that the deck chair had been dragged from its usual spot at the outside table, about 5 feet away to the sliding glass door. The chair was directly facing the window less than a foot away from the glass, right in front of the opening in the curtains. From where it was, the person would have had a perfect view of me and my nephew. The chair was positioned like someone had just pulled it up and taken a seat, like we were the show. I never noticed anyone outside the window or felt like I was being watched. The next day, I found 2 big handprints, with the fingers spread out, on my bedroom window. My bedroom window is on the first floor. Luckily, the room used to be my brother's, and he had some problems with sneaking girls in, so my parents installed some pretty good locks to the point where the window cannot be opened. To this day, I have no idea what happened. It's been several years with no other signs of peeping Toms since. Safe to say, the incident shook me to my core. I don't leave curtains open at night anymore. When I turned 11, I started babysitting my nieces and nephews because I was finally old enough. I had been babysitting for about 4 years when this happened. I was about 15 at the time and my sister worked early mornings, so she had asked me to stay for the night to babysit for her. I wasn't allowed to have a phone, so my mom would let me take hers just in case. I babysat 2 boys, one was about 8 at the time, I'll call him D, and the other was 4, I'll call him M. My sister lived in a not so great part of town, so I'd always keep the doors locked up tight. Plus I liked to listen to scary stories, and I was super into true crime, so I was a pretty paranoid kid. There was a pretty large apartment complex next to my sister's house, and it had some pretty sketchy people there, but they had a pretty nice playground and a basketball court right outside the house, and we went to play there a lot. On this particular day though, I had just woken up and I was making French toast for my 2 nephews. I was listening to music with my earbuds because they were still sleeping, but I knew they'd be up soon. You know when you have music in your ears, how sometimes it sounds like someone is calling out to you or you think you hear something. Well, I kept hearing noises and I kept pulling my earbuds out to listen, but the noises would stop. I did that about a dozen times before eventually chalking it up to my imagination. About the time I was finishing up the French toast, my nephews came out of the room and into the kitchen ready to eat. I sat my younger nephew in his booster chair and started cutting pieces up for him to eat, while my older nephew was sitting at the table with a plate full of French toast. We turned on the XM radio and started playing some kids' music while eating. I thought I was hearing noises again, but I kinda tuned them out. We finally finished eating and I put the dishes in the sink and got the kids dressed. They were begging to go to the playground, so I gave in and said sure. As I was getting dressed, I heard a loud crack. I jumped and ran out of the room pretty freaked out and I went to check on the boys. D came out of his room with M in his arms. I looked at D and said, "Did you break something?" He shook his head and looked absolutely petrified. I told the boys to stay in the hallway since there were no windows and I wasn't really sure what was going on. I started to walk around the house to see if something had fallen, but nothing looked out of place. I saw a shadow peeking in through the front door. The door had an oval glass pane, but it was difficult to see in unless you have your hands cupping your face while pressed against the window. I couldn't see his face, but he was in all black and he had black gloves on. I was standing to the side, so he couldn't see me. He looked around for a minute or two until he ran around the house again. I quietly ran back into the hallway and shoved my nephews into the bathroom and whispered, "Lock the door behind you." He was panicked and confused, but I didn't have a phone with me. I had to go back to the kitchen and get it. He closed and locked the door and I ran back out to grab my mom's phone. I heard glass cracking again and I started to lose my shit. I started crying and shaking and I called my sister. I don't really know why, but I called her and told her that someone was trying to break in the house. She freaked out and told me I needed to call the cops. I told her I was scared and I didn't want to hang up. I finally did and called the police. I was still in the kitchen and I saw another man run across the backyard. I was sobbing and shaking and the police weren't being quick enough. After asking my address and the necessary questions, they told me to stay on the line and they were sending someone out. It felt like it took forever, but finally a cop car drove around the neighborhood and said we were fine. I told him that there were two men outside trying to get in, so they got out of their cars and looked around the house. They went to the side that I heard the giant crack and they saw the one of the windows was shattered as another was cracked. They were definitely trying to get in, but I don't know what they were planning on doing. There was a giant bed frame in front of the two broken windows. I think if it wasn't there, I would probably not be telling this story. They never caught the men that were trying to get in, but I hope I'm never in a situation like that again.